yesterday.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the policy session of the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners on September 2023. Gary Schmidt, County Administrator. What's our first item?
Thank you, Chair Smith. First, Commissioner Savas is out of the office today, but the other commissioners are present. Your first policy session is Supportive Housing Services, Carryover, and Spend Down Update. Staff from Health, Housing, Human Services will present Rod Cook, the Director of Health, Housing, Human Services, and Vahid Brown, Deputy Director of the Housing and Community Development Division of Health, Housing, Human Services. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. We're here today to request the request we have from the board is allocation of the $33.9 million additional supportive housing services carryover funds. This would go towards capital needs category of the spend down plan approved by the board on June 14, 2023, and approval of allocations across a number of proposed capital needs investment areas. And we have Vahid Brown here, Deputy Director of Housing, to go over the details with you.
Thank you, Rod. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Vahid Brown, Deputy Director of Housing and Community Development. So a little bit of context. Yes, we're excited to be back to discuss this update and kind of consider the disposition of this additional $33.9 million in carryover funding. We came to the board on June 14th with a plan for the total carryover balance that we knew at that time of a little over $58 million, and this board unanimously approved a plan to spend those in 5 broad categories, including capital needs. We now have an update in the carryover balance due to the actual revenue collections being closed for the fiscal year, those collections being over the forecast significantly, and an accounting change that was agreed upon by the 4 jurisdictions related to revenue recognition that brings the total of additional funds to be considered as part of our carryover spending plan of $33.9 million. So you've already discussed and deliberated about the use of that 58.6. What we're here today is to discuss the 33.9 additional funding and to provide a recommendation on moving forward with those dollars. So we're excited to be here this morning to continue this conversation with you and to take another step in Clackamas County in this thoughtful and deliberate process to move forward our goal to make Clackamas County a place where homelessness is rare, brief, and non-recurring. I won't go over again the 5 priority areas that we discussed on June 14th, but one of them was the capital needs, and we articulated under that capital needs and the $16.8 million there several buckets of priorities of the board that we were going to take preliminary steps to move forward on, and I'll have some update about those below. So we've updated you a number of times on the carryover balance. Now we're at that $33.9 million decision point. And aside from apprising you of updates to the carryover amount, we wanted to give you the opportunity to expand on and make deeper investments in some of those capital needs areas that were agreed to on June 14th. So the capital needs recommendations we have for you today, which I'll go into in more detail in a second, include 2 scenarios. The first scenario is simply what you approved on June 14th. It's the status quo. There's $16.8 million committed in our carryover plan for capital needs. That's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is roughly 50%. 50% of the $33.9 million additional that we're talking about today, committing that to capital needs. That's scenario 2. The 3 projects or initiatives already underway that were part of that bucket of capital needs we discussed on June 14th are the Clackamas Village, the Crisis Stabilization Center and Shelter, and investments in resource navigation centers. Those are moving forward. We've been discussing those updates with the board on a regular basis. The 3 additional allocation categories are city-led initiatives, recovery-oriented infrastructure, and medical respite or transitional housing. Now, with scenario 2, should the board decide to make this investment of 50% of the additional carryover in those areas, we would, for example, with city-led initiatives, begin engaging with cities to discern needs and opportunities to make investments in city-led initiatives to advance our goals. With recovery-oriented infrastructure, the board has just assembled the Clackamas Addiction and Recovery Summit. There's a lot of ideas and input and expertise coming out of that summit. In addition, staff at Health, Housing, and Human Services over the past several months have had a number of intentional conversations with all of the providers of addiction and recovery services that we've been able to meet with, many of them, to survey them about needs, opportunities, what do they see as kind of opportunities to expand their programming at Clackamas County should we make funding available. So we'll be able to provide a memo to the board reflecting that input from the provider community about needs. And medical respite, the county received a grant from Kaiser and the National Institute for Medical Respite Care to do some planning and some needs assessment around the needs for medical respite care for people experiencing homelessness. So this set aside would allow us the opportunity to move on recommendations for medical respite care for people experiencing homelessness should we have the available capital, should you approve that scenario. We're recommending scenario 2 because it allows for deep capital investments in board priorities and system needs while also allowing the board to retain for itself the flexibility to carry out intentional and deliberative planning and system gaps analysis before making additional allocations of the remaining $17 million. I'll offer a little more context on the recommendation for you to give yourself that flexibility. Over the past 2 years, we have established a system of care far more robust than we previously or historically had the ability to stand up given our limited resources. We are extremely proud of this system of care, how it's performing in the last 2 years. We have had 2 straight years of reductions in the number of people counted experiencing homelessness in our PIT counts. We have had 2 straight years of meeting or exceeding our critical housing placement goals with the Supportive Housing Services Program. We're doing great work in housing the people of Clackamas County, but we're also at a natural inflection point. We are engaging in some strategic planning work in the rural parts of the county. We're doing some strategic planning work across the family system, the system of providers that serve families with children experiencing homelessness to identify gaps. And we have this recovery summit and the input that's going to come from that. So there's an inflection point that I think speaks to the value of retaining that flexibility on the end of the board for the 50% of that $33.9 million to be able to capitalize on opportunities and fill gaps as that process and those strategic plans, which involve gaps analysis and needs assessments, bring forward new areas where deeper investments would be warranted. So I'll conclude my comments there. Commissioners, we do recommend the approval of scenario 2 as articulated in the board materials.
Thank you for your presentation on this. I like the flexibility involved should this board see something and that we haven't considered. And the capital needs are great. It's one thing to have a program, but you have to have a place to put the program. As you know, I'm speaking to the choir here on this, so I do like that. I have a question on the medical respite transitional housing. $2 million, that's $2 million from Kaiser, you said?
No, that's the recommended kind of bucket for the capital needs allocation. So of the 50% of the 33.9, that's the 17 million. That list there shows the additional scenario 2 on that side that's reflecting putting that 50%, that 17 million in those capital areas. So that would be putting a set aside of $2 million for medical respite capital needs.
Okay, medical respite for who? People offering the services?
So it would be, the capital needs would support the establishment of a program. So it's a kind of sheltering, safety off the streets that includes medical support, nursing staff, medical equipment, that kind of thing.
When you said respite, I'm thinking something else for
Okay.
respite. I'm using a different definition. And thank you for explaining that. Commissioner West.
Let me piggyback right off that since it's an issue of topic, medical respite. Am I understanding this correctly? Somebody is discharged from the hospital. Let's say that they were recently treated for cellulitis infection and they have other chronic medical issues, maybe unstable diabetic, congestive heart failure. Instead of putting them back on the streets, we give them some type of housing with nursing supports to stabilize them?
That is exactly right.
Okay, does this exist in its current fashion?
Not in Clackamas County.
Not in Clackamas County. So can you tell me, I know that when I worked for Kaiser and I did some rotations there on the floor, that there was, I remember discharging some people like to a hotel room or something. I remember something like that. Is that separate from us? Does that still happen?
That does still happen. There are limited pathways. There is a medical respite program in Multnomah County that receives referrals from Clackamas and Washington.
Okay.
It's small and it's always waitlisted. The folks who are Medicaid members can have short motel stays paid through Care Oregon, and that is one thing that happens. There's also the skilled nursing facilities, which would typically be the step down from a hospital stay.
Yeah.
Skilled nursing facilities are not taking people experiencing homelessness at this time, and I've been talking with the hospital systems about problem solving. This is one of the solutions we need to sort of put forward to address this. Skilled nursing facilities cannot discharge someone to homelessness. typically, so they will not take
They're
someone
a resident
experiencing.
at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. This is a critical gap in our system of care.
Can you tell me like what this $2 million does? Like what are, like specifically, like are we refabbing some property to make it nursing specific for these, well, I would still consider them patients or clients. Can you help me just understand that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. The grant with the National Institute for Medical Respite Care, or NIMARC, involves working with the county and our staff to understand the models of medical respite care around the country, what might fit our need, looking at some data from the hospital system so that we would say, okay, we should start with this sort of program. That might mean this kind of facility. We haven't determined that yet. So the $2 million is a set aside that would say, this allows us to move forward once we have a scope and scale. And of course, we would come back to the board as that planning work proceeds. But yeah, it would be to say, we want to refab, like you just said, we want to refab a building, install some medical equipment, hire nursing staff. That what often is a barrier to the establishment of medical respite care are the upfront costs involved that can't be reimbursed by Medicaid. So once it's established and moving,
So building the facility.
building the facility.
Can I add one more thing,
Yes.
question to this? Is I very much am acutely aware that people that have been often chronically homeless or are alone and are on hospice care and don't have any type of, and too often die alone.
Yeah.
Would this potentially provide some type of hospice resources or palliative care to those that are, homeless? Maybe they do have a substance abuse issue, whatever.
Yes.
But this would also be included in that?
Yes, that is often included in the models of medical respite care, hospice services.
I think that is a really smart and targeted approach here. Is $2 million enough to get you off the ground?
It's a placeholder.
Okay.
So it's a placeholder at the moment because we've just engaged with NIMARC, the National Institute. But I appreciate it. It may not be.
I also wouldn't be surprised if something comes out of the summit directly addressing this specifically. I would not be surprised by that. Can I keep asking away? Okay, so I know I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So 33.9 million today, you want to spend half of that and nest egg the other half?
That's correct.
Okay. When you talk about navigation resource centers, we had 5, we go to 10. Can you break down to me specifically like what that's a lot of money. What navigation centers, what resources, how does that augment what we're doing specifically?
Yeah, so we issued a notice of funding opportunity after our previous round of bringing the carryover plan with you and approving that framework on June 14th. That is open until June 28th, but we are seeking proposals from providers that would provide navigation centers or resource centers, day centers that bring together multiple service providers and allows for coordination of those service providers, allows people to go to a single place to get enrolled
Okay.
in multiple services, and connects them immediately to our system of care. We included in that solicitation the availability of receiving applications from the rural parts of the community as well, so we anticipate the ability to use non-SHS funding should we receive an eligible applicant from outside of the Metro Service District. So moving this up would allow us to have more flexibility to expand, to capitalize on applications we may receive.
So this could go to sticks and bricks to
Yes.
build out infrastructure.
Correct.
Okay. I think that you guys are. I think there's a lot of continuity in moving within a recovery-oriented system of care. I think that this, from what I can see and what I've read, really does, move the ball down the field and getting this work done within that model. So thank you for that. And I think that's all the questions I have. And thank you for explaining how that capital will be built out and for your guys' work. This is really smart. And thank you for also putting some seed money away for potentially other big things down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so last week we completed the summit, the addiction summit. Does the scenario 2 idea, is it sensitive to what we learned in that summit?
Yes, I think that what we're proposing in scenario 2 is a a significant increase in the available capital resources to move forward on ideas out of that summit.
Okay. And the next question is, as we look at potential projects for a recovery center, are you looking ahead at a pot of money from SHS dollars that could be used for that? Okay, because we're spending down about 16, almost 17 million now, but what's your forecast for, like, say, next spring? Should we get to a point where we could actually begin to commit to a project?
I'm not sure I understand the question precisely.
Yeah, so I'm
Commissioner
looking ahead at, say, let's just say, for example, second quarter calendar year, next year. Are we foreseeably going to have a significant amount of money to work with then, after we spend this, for moving forward on a facility, a recovery center?
Potentially, yes. I mean, I think that the revenue picture for supportive housing services
Right.
continues to exceed forecasts, so
Okay.
that has been true. I think that there remains, I think the board is still waiting for the summit to kind of conclude its recommendations. I'm not entirely clear about what all the next steps are, but I think that there's some more digesting that's being done by the county about the input there.
Gary?
The answer is yes, Commissioner Schull.
Okay.
If you approve the staff recommendation, you're saving away $15 million that you could later allocate for what the summit results tell you. And also the recovery model in this proposal includes an additional $7 million for recovery work. So you have about almost $20 million that you could spend on recovery work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? I believe there's some language at the bottom of page 3 for a motion.
Okay. I move that the board approve scenario number 2, which is 50% of the remaining one-time carryover dollars in the amount of $16.95 million for capital needs.
Second.
Commissioner Schull has moved that we approve scenario 2, which is 50% of the remaining one-time carryover dollars in the amount of $16.95 million for capital needs. Commissioner Schrader has seconded the motion. Any further discussions? Thank you very much. Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Schull,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. This
job, guys. Great
warms our
job.
hearts. We can
Yeah,
move forward.
absolutely.
Great
Very, very
leadership.
nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Gary, what's next?
Next is the board's Performance Clackamas Strategic Plan and Board Priorities, presented by me. Hi. So I'll get started. Way back in February this year, Commissioners, you met in a planning retreat to discuss your board priorities, and particularly the board strategic plan that we call Performance Clackamas. You looked at the current plan, and you made a draft change to the plan under your new proposed strategic plan for the years 2023 to 2028. It's a 5-year plan. We came back to you, staff came back to you on March 15th at a policy session to review that draft plan. And at that time, you had some significant feedback on the language of the goals. And you also, at my request, I suggested, could you maybe narrow it down outside of the plan to 2 or 3 things you'd like staff to work on over the next several months? You also discussed that, did not come to a decision, but ultimately decided let's have planning meetings once a month so we can discuss this further. So we did start a monthly planning meeting where you started to have these conversations, but we didn't finish them. And unfortunately, due to scheduling, we had to cancel many of the recent planning meetings. So all to say is I'm coming back to you today to ask, 1, to revisit the draft strategic plan you created in February to see, are you ready to move forward on this or not? And just for fun, I put together a list of the things you've asked me and staff to work on that you think are important and are important to the board. And guess what? They are 67 things you've asked me and staff to work on. And while staff will get every single one of them done, we can't do all 67 at once. So I would like your guidance on if you either you do or don't want to approve your formal strategic plan. That's one question. Second, of the 67 priorities, I call them, are there things you'd like staff to focus on, kind of the top tier over the next 6 to 8 months? I would love your feedback on those two questions. Unfortunately, Commissioner Savas isn't here today, and I certainly would want his feedback, so we can start the conversation, see where you'd like to go, if you need any further information, or you can make a decision today. So that's kind of the kickoff of what I'm seeking your input on, please, Commissioners.
Thank you. Board, the 67 priorities starts on page 5. Okay, just to look at that. I've made a very concerted effort to try to schedule our planning meetings to discuss this, and I've not been able to either have a quorum or a majority, either issue, to have all 5 commissioners there. So I've had to cancel the last 2, maybe 3 planning meetings. I have not scheduled any more planning meetings going forward to the end of the year because of schedules, and they usually have to happen in the afternoon. There's nothing wrong with working in the afternoon, but some commissioners don't attend or can't. So looking at this list, I think the entire list is obviously important to all of us, or it wouldn't be on the list. So I think it's interesting that Gary put this together for us, and it just goes to show, before we take on anything new in this county, we need to start finishing projects. And I think with our Clackamas Addictions and Recovery Summit, that is a huge lift. A huge lift. And we have ongoing business. We had our executive sessions where you see it's ongoing business that comes at us just as a matter of course of the calendar. And it takes a lot of our time and energy, and more importantly, it takes more staff time and energy to make these presentations than it does for them to present and for us to talk about it. So it's a tremendous workload that we're looking on. So I'd like some opinions. Gentlemen, I'm not sure who was first. Commissioner West.
You alluded to my question. Great minds think alike. So this list is definitely based, prioritization is super important, right? And triaging this list is important. So there's all kinds of variation in here. Interesting would be know is like where they are on the timeline of completion, because finishing projects is important and to check the box. I don't know if there's a chart that can say, we started and we're 50% done, we're 75% done before we pick up the next thing. So we're being more efficient with our understanding of the timeline. Some of these things I feel like, are more than halfway done. Some of them are just getting going. And I'm just kind of trying to do that on my own brain. But maybe that would be helpful. And then I think it would be easy to maybe have a session where we start to put things in priority boxes as a group. And to start to try to just do some basic triage. And then you've got to have an understanding of the timeline though too, of where we're at with them. That would be my feedback with what I see here.
Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, Administrator Schmidt, the 3 recommendations you have: build strong infrastructure, safe and healthy, secure communities, and the vibrant economy, and what you've identified under each, I think that looks good. I'm wondering if we could take those 3 things that you recommended and identify on the list of the 60 projects which ones fall under those 3 primary, like phase 1, I would call them, goals. And then maybe the board can look at what remains and give you a secondary priority list on what to work on should you get to that point. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
Yeah, because again, what you've identified on page 3 and 4, I think whatever your criteria for coming up with those obviously was a good set of criteria, because those are very important projects.
Thank you, yes.
Okay?
And if I may, page 3 and 4, that's what you came up with, board, so that's what you came up with it at your retreat.
Yeah.
And so that's really your good work, thank you. But I totally understand, yes, we can put a timeline together of the status of each of the 67 projects, and then also put them within the 3 board priorities to see where they fit. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that idea. Is that clear? We take the three priorities that are listed. I'm going to state them. Build a strong infrastructure, safe, healthy, and secure communities, and a vibrant economy. And there are metrics tied to each one of those. And I'm just going to repeat, Commissioner Scholl. It was recommended that we take the list of 60-plus items and categorize those within the list of three with a possible timeline, possible, as close as we can get. Does anybody want to make a motion to that effect? Commissioner Scholl.
I'm looking for it here.
It's not that motion is not in your staff report, but that's a good
Yeah.
direction ahead if that's where you want to go.
Okay, we don't need a motion?
No, yeah, a motion would be great, what you just shared, Chair.
Do you want me to make it?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just, Chair, I move that we formally adopt the board's strategic plan.
Option one. Option one.
Option one, Chair, sorry, let me start over. Chair, I move that we adopt option one to formally adopt the board strategic plan for 2023, 2028, and focus on the three board priority projects to be completed by June 30th, 2024.
So that's actually not what that's not what you're discussing.
No.
Okay, so am I talking about like what I said? Can we
Okay.
clarify, please
Yes,
clarify again?
uh-huh.
And then I will make a motion that we need. I withdraw that, by the way.
Okay, let's withdraw that motion, if you don't mind.
Withdrawing it, let's get clarity.
Okay, Commissioner Scholl, would you like to give a stab at it? Or I can make the motion.
Well, before I make the motion.
Yes.
I just want to make sure we understand this. We're going to take the three recommendations of Performance Clackamas that you have on pages 3 and 4, and then we're going to take the remaining list of the 60 priorities and what's left over, make them into a Phase 2 or Phase 3 list, right?
Yes.
think I
May
got
I,
it
may
now.
I,
Does
may
that
I?
make sense?
Yes, yeah, Gary.
So
let's-
what I'm hearing you say is the three board priorities that you basically already approved in February, build a strong infrastructure, safe, healthy, and secure communities, vibrant economy, those stay. Use the 67 other priorities that I have created, make them show where they would fit under those three main board priorities, and include a timeline of the status of each of the 67 projects, where they're at, start, middle, end, so you can evaluate all of that when you come back to review this again.
Chair, I move that we take the three priorities in the BCC plan and take the 67 or 60-something different priorities and projects, and we triage them within the three different categories, along with a timeline plan on where each of these projects are, so that the board can better prioritize its goals moving forward. That's, okay.
That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yes, second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Gary, do I need to repeat the motion? I don't think I do. I think it's very clear to me.
It's
We
on the
have-
record.
Yeah, we have three overarching goals, and we have 67 to-dos underneath that fit in within the three arching goals. Okay. Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll come back to you as soon as we can to have this data and help have a further conversation. Thank you. All right, we're ahead of schedule, but we can move forward if that's okay, Chair?
Yes, please do.
Thank you. The next session is Economic Development Awards. Presenting is the Office of Economic Development and the Department of Transportation and Development. Laura Edmonds, Manager of the Office of Economic Development, and Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. So you're coming forward, and go ahead, please.
Welcome. Please introduce yourselves.
Thank you so much, Chair Smith, Commissioners. I am Dan Johnson, Director of the Department of Transportation and Development.
I am Laura Edmonds, Manager of the Office of Economic Development.
We had the pleasure of being in front of this board on June 28th and August 2nd, and now on September 20th to have a discussion around some funding requests for lottery revenue. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura, who can kind of run through these most recent requests.
Okay, so given today, so thank you, Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt, thanks for having us again. So today, we're bringing before you 3 award funding requests. The outstanding Regional Arts and Coalition Council funding request for $62,000 that had been originally presented to you on June 28th, and you asked to hold off, or June 28th and August 2nd. And then you asked to revisit it once additional financial data was provided, which we provided, and that's your attachment A. And then a second award request is for additional funding for Clackamas County Arts Alliance for $200,000. That will serve as seed money to allow CCAA to leverage grants, business, and individual donations for the purchase of art that will be installed in the new courthouse. That's attachment B. And attachment C is the funding request from Pamplin Media for $65,000 for the purpose of providing more dedicated local news coverage to better inform and engage the residents of Clackamas County. So there is, let's see, there are no staff recommendations at this time for this, but your options are before you.
Thank you. We will discuss this. Very nice going forward. I also asked for some additional information on the budget going forward, Gary, on remaining balances for prior years. I don't see that on here. Is that for another board meeting?
I'm sorry, it is not in this staff report, no, but I can verbally give an update if you wish.
Yes?
Right.
Yes. Can you do that?
Yes. So there is carryover, there's a carryover fund balance in the lottery dollars that Clackamas County has received. That was part of the budget process. It's not a secret, but it is significant. It is approximately $5 million of carryover funds. Most of that is for staffing positions that are currently vacant in the Office of Economic Development that I kept vacant until I hired Laura. So there's 2.5 vacant positions, which is part of that money because the lottery dollars pays for those staff. And in the pandemic years, the board and the county really didn't spend a lot of lottery dollars. So it's just carried over. You don't have to spend it all today, and I don't advise you to spend it all today, but there is significant funds in reserve. But I asked, a lot of that we want to save for staff, and the rest, you can make decisions anytime in the future on projects. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Gary. I like having savings account, but I also like knowing if the board needs the special allocation, some one-time allocation that is on here today, that it's not going to be crippling to the budget going forward. And that's the reason why I sought out the information on that, knowing that we probably had some money tucked away someplace from the good work of the stewards of our funds, Dan Johnson and your staff. Thank you for that. We have a couple commissioners in the queue. Commissioner West.
I have a couple thoughts around this. I'm going to start with the controversial one right out the gate. I am getting a little prickly with this Pamplin Media funding. How did this even get on the list? Can you guys, why is this even here?
I'm going to answer this one. So this is with Commissioner Savas is forwarding this request, and it's unfortunate he's not here today to speak to it. But there was an outreach from the publisher of the Pamplin papers, had a conversation with Commissioner Savas. They are a Clackamas-owned business, by the way. Their headquarters are in Clackamas County, Pamplin Media. And they are struggling like any other media outlet is right now. And as you know, the printed paper is no longer. It's, I believe, entirely a digital publication. There's no longer free copies of the paper around the county. And around the pandemic time, Pamplin stopped having a Clackamas County beat reporter, which of course impacts the public because they don't always know what's going on in their county government. Of course, we send information out at the county, but not always the media. So the option was, because it's a small business in Clackamas County, totally allowable use of lottery dollars, is this something the board wants to consider to support Pamplin Media, and in particular, as the request asked for, it would just have more dedicated news coverage for the county. We are not paying for a reporter. We have no editorial guidance. We are totally separation of media and government, but it's an option to help a struggling business. So that's the request.
So here's my thoughts. I bet you they would be doing just fine if most of the people in this county was interested in reading their paper. They're not. You know why? Because they do a bad job. They report poorly. It's heavily skewed. In my personal opinion, they're not calling balls and strikes and doing editorial good work. Many people in this county have completely unsubscribed, and they have told me so themselves. I've seen them unfairly malign and just shoddy reporting this county, and now they want to ask us for money because they're struggling. I don't know. Commission, I know I'm being hard right now, but I am a hard no on Pamplin Media's request.
I am a hard no on Pamplin Media. Shall we move on? Commissioner Scholl, you have a comment on something?
Yes, my question was on the Pamplin Media issue. Has Pamplin Media asked other governmental agencies for support?
Yes, they have.
They have. Okay. Yeah, I find this a little bit strange. So I don't, unless somebody can come up with a better idea to support this, I don't think I can support it today. Thank you.
Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I just kind of want to make a general statement here. I know we're asking for lottery dollars, and my stance has always been it needs to go specifically for economic development, that is business retention, expansion, and recruitment, and beefing up the staffing so we have a functional economic development department. I'm a no on Pamplin. I don't know where that came from. I don't have any background on that. I am a big supporter of the arts. I always have been. However, it is of concern to me that the arts organizations keep coming to us for dollars, as do other organizations, without having any fundraising plan for their own sustainability. And that has always concerned me about that, because we get these requests from groups every year that have not, and I'm sounding, Ben told me I was a Republican yesterday, just to tell you that, okay? He goes, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be, I'm like, I worry about these other organizations consistently coming to us for dollars, and yeah, you can make a case it's economic development, but they never seem to be able to long-term sustain themselves. And that worries me, and I can do some one-offs if that's where we want to go as a commission, but I really don't want to set up a process where this becomes the candy jar, because it's money that we can kind of take and reallocate, and I think it really needs to be focused on economic development. So am I going to say no? I mean, rock in a hard place. Am I going to say no to RAC? Because I'm on how many arts boards? Clackamas County Arts Alliance, okay, they're helping us with the artwork for that. But they cannot continue to depend on us as a county to fund them at these levels. They have to be, they're not a core county function, okay? Just saying. To me, economic development is a core county function. So I'm just being cranky. I'm being the Republican today. I can get there with these other two, I suppose, now, but I really, after all the years I've been here, consistently, we've been a deep pocket, and we can't do that anymore, and I think lottery dollars are specifically for business retention, expansion, and recruitment.
Thank you, Martha.
Just
So
saying.
I had
Okay.
Stephen Madcore look up the ORS that governs this. The words retention, recruitment are not in the statute. I will just say that.
I know that,
And
but-
we have defined that going forward. There's a one-off in here that I think is really important, okay? I don't think I hear consent, movement on Pamplin Media. That's off the table right now. Regarding the RAC, I do not support the RAC, because it's a Portland-driven business, and they have never been able to prove to us what they're bringing to Clackamas County. Now, art is somewhat, could be an economic development feature, because it does go to artists, and then they can produce a work of value that people can enjoy. That's our Clackamas County Arts Alliance. And I think that the project that we have sitting behind us, Courthouse Art, is very important. And it's a one-off. It's a one-time allocation.
Okay.
We have $5 million extra surplus, and so the amount for that is a one-time, and I'm perfectly fine with that. We've already got county council's opinion on that. We can do that. I believe we have Commissioner West next.
I agree we are not going to fund Pamplin Media. It's my understanding also that they recently have their own real struggles. I don't know if their doors are going to stay open, but I don't know if this would even make a difference, but haven't been impressed. But I do think when I've had 3 or 4 really fact-finding, relationship-building meetings with RAC. They were able to show me, the last meeting I had, they brought in 2 of their local artists that immediately did receive benefit to be able to do their work here in Clackamas County. One of them was a painter, a muralist named, his name is Mr. Todd, Darren Todd, and he has done a number of stunning murals in different corporate buildings, I think for Advantage Credit Union. There's another one here, I believe, in Oregon City that's quite well known. He's done stuff throughout the region that's quite brilliant. The other one was the Youth Music Project, which provides, they allow concerts to happen with youth. They do music lessons. They have a glee club. And many of the youth that are able to participate in this are low-income youth, are foster care children that are allowed to have these extracurricular activities and do a lot of really fun stuff around music, and also providing them instruments. That directly comes to Clackamas County. They do significant funding for the Lakewood Theater. By the spreadsheet that they showed me that we broke down with staff, it wasn't always this way that we would get more money than we put into RAC, but it looks like to me, I'm convinced that we're getting more than a 2-to-1 return from their leveraging capabilities, not just from federal dollars, but also bigger entities that, I think it's just, I can't deny the fact that I do believe that they leverage those dollars. I would ask the board, based just on the ability to make one of our dollars more valuable and the critical arts programs that they do already support, and the artists that I have personally reached out to and met, that we would consider finding a way for RAC to work in unison with the Clackamas County Arts Alliance together to get these goals moving forward. I think there is economic development within this space, and I think that there's room for both of them. So I am going to advocate I know my board does not totally agree with me, but I'm going to advocate that we do fund the RAC.
Okay. Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, I had a question about the $200K, if approved, for the Clackamas County Arts Alliance. Are we sure that $200,000 is going to be focused on the courthouse art projects?
I think Nancy Bush.
Is that right?
Mark, Nancy Bush can answer that. She's our lead on that project. Now, come on up, Nancy. What was brought to our attention, Martha and I sit on that committee. The art for the courthouse is not funded by taxpayer dollars, okay? Unlike Multnomah County had a just blanket tax budget for art. We are desperately trying to apply for grants, and grants are available to art for this project. However, there is no seed money to apply. We have to have some type of a match. And doing this, you want to explain that?
So, yes, just what Chair Smith was saying, the dollars, the $200,000 would be used for the courthouse, and it would be used for seed money for other grants, as well as go directly to art for the courthouse. And we can, we talked about, where do we want artists from? We're trying to make sure we get artists from Clackamas County, which is, of course, part of our economic engine here. So it would be used for the courthouse art.
Okay, with that in mind, I would like to support option 2 today.
Okay, I think we have Commissioner West.
Yeah, so here's a little bit of a nuance too when it comes, like Multnomah County just did this, but they have a 2% kicker that has to go to public art, and so they have this huge, robust budget to do really cool. I was in the courthouse. It's really, really cool. It's a beautiful courthouse. The art is amazing. But they have this built in. We don't have that in Clackamas County. My concern is that this $200,000 is not enough for the size of the courthouse for the seed money. If I make a motion today, I will consider actually doubling that. I think we need to do the $400,000 to make the investments in the art for our courthouse. We need to make sure we get every grant available dollar to actually fully fund it, so we can also have a beautifully fully furnished, ready to go, proud to be Clackamas County Courthouse. And I think we need to be a little bit more aggressive with our seed money.
Commissioner Schrader.
Okay, is there going to be an expectation with these organizations, you're saying specifically for the courthouse? What does that mean? Does that mean, are they picking the art? Are they getting the art? What's their role? I don't see anything that
Whose
tells
role?
me, well, the Clackamas County Arts Alliance. If we
Okay,
give them
No,
$400,000.
the Clackamas County Arts Alliance is our fiscal agent because
Right,
they have a
okay.
nonprofit set up. So they are helping us apply for these grants because they have the expertise to do it.
Okay,
And they have a bank account set up. It's be very cumbersome for this little committee to go out and establish themselves as a separate 501c3, establish a bank account, which requires meeting minutes, it requires a legal structure. So that's why we're using Clackamas County Arts Alliance as the fiscal agent and legal structure for us to go and apply to whomever available. Is that correct?
That is correct. The only thing I would add to that, actually, we have to have the Arts Alliance apply for some of the grants because the county cannot apply for those grants.
okay. That makes, but we don't have a particular contract with them of expectations of what we're
We are
going to get.
working,
We're
we're
working on the
working
contract.
on.
Okay, that was my question,
We are
too,
working
yeah.
on an
You're
agreement
working
with
on
them.
something about, we're just not going to give money, because my concern again is, are they going to expect this every year? That's
No.
what I worry about.
No, this is a
This is
one-time.
one-time.
This is a one-time. I-
And I'm saying I'm not against the arts. I love the arts. I contribute to the arts. I'm on all kinds of arts boards. But I've just been here a long time, and I've seen consistently organizations come to us every single year, and they're like the most important thing that we,
Martha, we went to the arts, we went to the Clackamas County Arts Alliance to do this. They
Right.
didn't come to us and say,
Okay,
I mean, it
okay,
was an
yeah.
idea that came out of our meetings. Gee, could the Clackamas County Arts Alliance do this? You're already set up with the know-how, and it is a process. Gary?
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioners, of course, you get to decide how to spend every penny of money at Clackamas County. That's your right and authority, of course. My job is to advise you. I don't want to tie Laura's hands. You also directed me to create a more robust Office of Economic Development. I don't want to tie her hands of taking too much of her future staffing money away. Lottery dollars are not consistent. If there's a recession, that money will lower, so we want to keep some money in reserve. So all that to say, would you consider, as you're discussing this for the courthouse art, approving $300,000 today, knowing you can always come back, and this is just a seed money to start, and maybe the Arts Alliance will be so successful you won't have to give any more. But if not, then you can come back again and give more money later. If you would consider that, please. Thank you.
Commissioner Scholl, you have your light on.
Yes, I just wanted to say that on September 11th, Diane Alvarez, Executive Director of the Clackamas County Arts Alliance, requested $200,000. I would recommend we just do the $200,000 today, get them started. Later on, we can cross the bridge if they need more money. That'll keep
I'm okay with that.
the funds at your disposal or Edmund's for other uses for the time being.
Thank you. Can I make a motion, Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Chair, I move that we approve funding for RAC at the request of $62,000. I'm making a full motion, right? Are you one of these individual?
Yeah,
Okay,
let's do it, please.
please, okay. Chair, I move that we, on option 2, that we move to fund the CCA funding request for $400,000 for seed money for the Clackamas County Courthouse art.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Further discussion? Tony, there's a motion to fund the CCAA courthouse seed money for art at $400,000. And the second has been made by Commissioner West, second by me. Would you please take the poll?
Commissioner Scholl,
No.
Commissioner Schrader,
No?
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion is tied, therefore it fails. Commissioner West, would you like to make a secondary motion?
Let's give the 200. I would make a motion to give $200,000 to.
Seconded.
There we go.
Commissioner Schrader has moved that we
Give $200,000 to
give
Clackamas County.
$200,000 to CCAA for Clackamas County Courthouse Art, and Commissioner Scholl has seconded that. Further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes. Thank you very much. Another motion, Commissioner West.
Chair, I move that we fully support the funding request from RAC and the request of $62,000.
Commissioner West has moved. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Commissioner West has moved, we fund RAC at $62,000, and Commissioner Schrader has seconded the motion. Further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say, I will do this time, but again, my notion still stands, is that we can't continue to do one-offs with lottery dollars if we want to have a robust economic development department. That's just my sense. I will vote for this today because I do think they do valuable work, but at some point, we have to, what is going on here, guys? I'm sounding like a Republican. I'm like, well, yeah, look at Mark. He's like,
For the
geez,
record,
Martha,
you said you
know.
were grouchy, but Republicans aren't grouchy, we're happy people.
Oh, I know you're happy people. I'm grouchy today.
I think-
Okay,
oh,
so,
I have a
look,
comment.
let's
ahead.
just do it.
So here's my comment is, Republicans like to see a return on their investment. If you can get more than a 2-to-1 return on your investment, that's a pretty good ROI for the county.
Well taken,
While
yes,
also
Commissioner
helping
Schull.
foster
Yep.
care kids learn how to play an instrument, funding
I
the theaters,
know.
and
I
that we
know.
can have beautiful murals across the county and leverage better dollars. So that's why I think that this is a win-win for all of us.
And I will support you in that, but maybe I just didn't get enough sleep last night. I don't know, but okay.
I do not think that the funding RAC is a core county service. It's not up to this commission to fund art and music for children in elementary schools or elsewhere. It is very valuable, but that's not what this commission has historically ever done. Maybe anecdotally through that. Tony, I think we have a motion. Would you please take the poll?
Commissioner Schull,
No.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
No, motion is tied to 2, and therefore it fails. Gary, what's next?
Would you please make a formal vote on the Pamplin 2, just so we know it's the no?
Chair, I move that we do not fund Pamplin Media at the request of $65,000.
Second.
Commissioner West has moved that we do not fund the Pamplin Media request at $65,000. Commissioner Schrader has seconded the motion. Commissioners, an affirmative yes vote means we do not fund this. Okay? Further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Schull,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 4-0.
Fails.
Passes. It passes.
Passes.
I said an affirmative vote. Okay, that's the way it was made, affirmative, yes, so the motion passes that we do not fund Pamplin Media. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board on any of this today? Thank you very much. We did good work today, commissioners.
We have one more session.
I know.
Okay, sorry.
On this
Sorry,
area.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to tee you up,
I'm sorry,
Gary.
Chair. I'm
Yes,
sorry,
Gary, what's next?
Next, Chair, would you please convene as the Water Environment Services Board?
I will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as a Water Environment Services Board.
This is a Water Environment Services Capital Projects Update. Greg Geis, the Director of Water Environment Services, will present.
Good morning, Gary. Good morning, Commissioners. Normally, I would have Jeff Stallard, our Capital Program Manager, with me here today to answer any hard questions, but since we got moved up, he's on his way. So hopefully he'll get here by the end. If we have anything I can't answer, he'll be able to. So today, what I want to do is talk to you about some current and future large capital projects that we're working on. This is in anticipation of renewing our 5-year capital improvement plan, which we will bring to the board in January. We presented it initially to our advisory committee on September 14th, and we'll be seeking their endorsement or recommendation in November to then bring to the board. So, next slide. So what West does, we protect water quality and public health. Our organization, our industry is literally out of sight, out of mind, and underground for the most part, and most people don't know who we are, what we do, or why we matter in this community. And that's been a big initiative on my part over my tenure as the West Director, is to get out in the community and let people know who we are, what we do, why we matter. To that end, we serve about 200,000 people in the urbanized portion of Clackamas County, everything from Milwaukee all the way out to the far reaches of Happy Valley and down to Westland, Oregon City, Gladstone, as well as the Clackamas industrial area. So we have a pretty broad service area. We have over 360 miles of pipes, 21 pump stations, 5 treatment facilities, and we treat about 7 billion gallons of wastewater every year. And what we do with that, the waste that goes down your toilet, we do 3 things with it. We make clean water that goes out to the Willamette River for downstream uses. We make electricity. With our latest project, we can make up to half of the electricity that we consume in the treatment process. And we make a natural fertilizer that's shipped, trucked out to eastern Oregon for primarily application and fertilization of wheat fields. So we do a lot with what goes down your toilet. And like I said, today I'm going to talk about the major projects that we have underway in anticipation of the approval of our 5-year capital improvement plan that you'll see in January. Next slide. So what I'm going to present today is a product of, and what I'll present in January is also a product of what we call thoughtful planning. Some of you were here and some of you weren't back in 2016. Thank you, Chair Smith and Martha Schrader, and Commissioner Schrader, when we formed the West 190 Partnership, which essentially folded 3 separate service districts into one. And all of the assets, all the liabilities, we went from 7 advisory committees to 1. We went from 3 separate budgets and audits per year to 1. The other thing, the most important thing that did was allowed us to do long-range planning. So prior to that action, any interaction or any deals between the separate service districts was essentially a political event. And when we consolidated that it changed that. So we couldn't plan 20 years out because we didn't know who was going to pay for what, and we didn't know what the arrangements might be or what the circumstances might be in the future. And now we do. And so since 2016, 2017, when we did that action, again, thank you, we've done a series of master plans, looking at our collection system, looking at our treatment facilities, looking at our surface water infrastructure, and done the engineering forecasting as well as the financial forecasting. So we are very confident in what we need to do over the next 20 years, and we're very confident in how and when we're going to pay for the infrastructure that we need to serve this community in the future. Next slide. Overall, when you look at what we spend money on from a capital infrastructure standpoint, it's about 60% for reliability. That's rehabilitation of existing infrastructure. 40% of what we're spending money on moving forward and today is for growth. So obviously Happy Valley is, I think, the fastest growing community in the state, maybe in the region, and we need to accommodate all that growth. And you'll see projects today that do just that. So that's pretty much the split. Next slide. Oh, I would add that 60-40 split is for the next 5 years, but we actually have a 12-year capital improvement plan that we've developed along with a financial plan to pay for it. We're not going to ask you to approve that, but that split, that 60-40 split continues beyond the 5-year out to the 12-year. All right. So the existing outfall, that's the dotted gray line. You can see our treatment facility in the upper right-hand corner of that picture. The existing outfall follows Agnes Avenue down to Main Street and then diverts out through Clackamas Park. That is a 72-inch diameter pipe, and it is nearing its capacity during wet weather events. So we need to build a second outfall, and we are actively working on that now. The new outfall will be the green line, which again follows Agnes Avenue down to Main Street. Then it will be a tunnel, and it's a 90-inch diameter pipe, so 7.5-foot diameter new outfall that we're going to be putting in. Part of that will be open cut and digging up Agnes Avenue, putting a pipe in it, and then we're going to send a tunnel boring machine from around where those two lines diverge and have a wet exit within the river. That's the plan. Big price tag, $66.4 million. We're $66.4 million is what we're projecting. We are in the process of getting a guaranteed maximum price with the contractor right now. I have a number, but I can't share it publicly yet. And the other thing that was unique about this project is we had to have a ballot measure. Some of you may remember that. Oregon City has a provision in their charter that requires a vote of the people anytime you work in, on, or under a city park. So thankfully, we geared up, got support from the Oregon City Business Alliance and other civic groups, and got a 70% yes vote to do this project a couple years ago. So thank you for that. And then we are expecting construction on this in 24-25. We're actively in design phase right now, almost have a guaranteed maximum price, and you'll see that as soon as it's done. All right, next slide. So the other, another big project that we're working on, well, as we know, Happy Valley is growing rapidly, and they recently, actually in March of this year, they approved the Happy Valley, or Pleasant Valley North Carver Comprehensive Plan, which is their plan for growth for the next 20 years. So it's basically 172nd out to about 190th in Clackamas County, and then down south in the Carver area. So we need to build capacity to accept that. We're looking at about, well, so they approved that plan in March of 2023, and we're already in the planning phases for serving that area. If you look in the upper right-hand portion of this photo, the red lines, that's our Rock Creek extension. And that's the infrastructure that we need to build in order to serve that community for hopefully the next 20 years. So we're actively working on that. And that's actually where Jeff is right now. We're doing a series of tours, van tours with community members. Last week I was on the same tour. Commissioner Savas was there. We had Councilor Sherman from Happy Valley. We had Jay Jones from the North Clackamas Chamber and other community members. So we're trying to get the word out. This is what we're doing. It's going to be a few years out before we're building, but we are actively pursuing design at this point. If you see in the middle of that picture, the orange section, that's the section that we need to do first. That's the constraint. That section is close to capacity today. So we need to get that built first. And I think, yeah, that's, we're going to begin construction in 2026 on that, as well as the Rock Creek extension in the upper right-hand corner. So again, this is a big project over time, $46 million. The blue line between the red and the green line, that was the original Rock Creek extension. It's large enough for future growth. The orange line was built in the 1970s, and so no one, I don't think, anticipated the explosive growth that was going to be happening in Happy Valley back in the day. So that line is smaller than it should be, and we need to expand it. The other thing I wanted to mention, so all the flow from Happy Valley moves from right to left on the map, essentially east to west. If you see the green line and the black dot there in the middle, that's where we peel off flow. We take a portion of that flow and bring it down to our Tri-City facilities rather than having it drained by gravity to Kellogg in Milwaukee. Our Kellogg facility is geographically constrained and cannot increase capacity. So we are also part of this project is we're currently able to bring 10 million gallons a day down through that green line. We call it the inner tie. And we'll expand that capacity to 30 million gallons per day. Next slide. Another big project we have going on in West Lynn, this is upgrading our Willamette pump station, which is near where the Blue Heron treatment lagoons used to be on the west side of the river. We're replacing that pump station and replacing a good chunk of the force main that right now it crosses the, what do they call it, the Arch Bridge in Oregon City, and it flows by gravity. We've already gotten approval from you folks and cut a check to ODOT to put a new pipeline on the new I-205 bridge.
Is
So-
that
Yeah.
the pipeline that West Lynn,
Yes.
was it, who paid for that?
Well, we're paying for it. They're going to build their own. So we're building ours now. They're going to use it while theirs is being built on the other side of the
While
river.
West Lynn's is being built?
Yes.
And did they get an allocation from the legislature to do that?
I don't know how they
Okay,
funded that.
okay, good.
I know they asked for one. I don't know if they got it.
Right, okay, just curious. Thank you, Greg.
Anyway, so in the meantime, we won't need it until 26, 27, and they're going to use it until then, which is good for them because they don't have to buy water from Tualatin Valley, and it's good for South Fork Water because they don't lose that. There's not a loss of revenue for them.
Okay. While we're on this slide, before you go on, PS means pump station, correct?
Yes, I apologize for
What does
that.
FM mean?
Force main.
Forced main?
Force main, it's a
Nobody would know
pressurized.
that,
Yeah,
looking
no,
at
that's-
this. I mean, I know that's really nice language for you guys who like acronyms,
Yes.
but I'm kind of like, been starting to be a stickler on acronyms, because whereas it's your language every single day, we see this maybe once every 6 months, and we deal with a lot of different topics. So if you could at least define the acronyms for us, that would be helpful in the future.
Understood and will do.
Thank you.
And I agree. Yeah, okay, next slide. So I know Commissioner Savas mentioned in the past about our, kind of our ongoing day-to-day work out in our collection system. So we also have a program, of essentially $1.8 million per year, that we use for, I wouldn't say incidentals, but things that come up during the course of our work. Something breaks, we need to fix it, right? We also have a program, a dedicated source of funding for lining our pipes. So what we call inflow and infiltration. When pipes get old, they get cracks, they get separated, and we need to go on a regular basis and reline those to make them tight. So that's part of it. And we do that based on television inspections. So we send a camera. We do a certain number of miles of pipe per year. We try to get through our system, I think, completely every 5 to 7 years, and do ongoing rehabilitation based on what we find. Next slide. You've seen this before, too. Not many people know, but we have an 80 or 90 acre gem from a habitat standpoint right in the middle of the urbanized area of Clackamas County. It's called Three Creeks. It's adjacent to the Harmony campus, the aquatic center. And it was owned originally by the development agency. They planned ball fields and all kinds of things down there. That didn't pan out. And eventually Wes came into ownership. And so what we're doing is a pretty massive habitat restoration project there. $3 million in surface water funds. We've got $1.4 million from the state, and then we got a $620,000 grant from Metro to do that. You'll be seeing that we're in design. Well, we're almost done with design. We should be in construction this year. Lots of educational groups use this area. It's very, very popular with the surrounding community. Clackamas Community College Environmental Learning Center and Trackers Earth of Portland, which is a youth outdoor camp, utilize this site. It really is a gem, and we want to do all we can to improve the habitat there. In the future, the next big thing, I think, for the Three Creeks area is getting people in there. If anybody's been there, I know Commissioner Scholl has, and it's very informal, unimproved walking paths. It's where people have found their way through it. And so I think it's kind of beyond Wes's mission to provide that type of access, but we certainly are looking for partners, whether it's NCPRD or Metro, to get other people active.
Is there public access available to this now?
It's informal.
Informal,
You
so
would
people
park-
can just walk through it if they want to?
Yes, you would park at the Aquatic Center parking lot and just walk down the hill, and there's
Yes, and it is
trails.
quite large, and people might be wondering, gee, what is all that land used for? But yes, thank you
Right.
for that, Greg.
Yep. So we're very excited about that one. Next slide. Again, what you're going to be seeing in January is our 5-year capital improvement plan. This is just kind of a flow diagram. A lot goes into that. There's a lot of input. There's a lot of process. There's a lot of opportunities for input before the board is going to see that. And like I said, we have the plans in place from an engineering standpoint, all those master plans that I shared with you, and we have a long-range financial plan to pay for it. And again, I've said this for about 3 years now, but it hinges on 5% year-over-year rate increases. And I think I just literally gave a new employee orientation presentation this morning to several new Wes employees and was reflecting on how lucky I feel that Wes is positioned the way that we are. We have these plans in place. We have a supportive board. We have a sound financial footing, and we know what needs to be built, when it needs to be built, and how we're going to pay for it. And a lot goes into that, and thank you for that. Next slide. Okay, so next steps, like I said, we presented our capital improvement plan to our advisory committee on September 14th. We're going to seek their recommendation in November, and you will see that in January. It's a total of almost $240 million over the next 5 years, which is astounding. But again, we've been saving up for this for several years. We have healthy reserves, and like I said, we have a plan for financing it moving forward. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any easy questions.
Thank you, Greg, for this interesting capital improvement plan. Do commissioners have any qualifying questions? Yes, Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Geis. That was very informative. My question is on the Clackamas Interceptor Program. We have a contract with Jacobs Engineering now to do a study on the next phase of the Sunrise Corridor between 122nd and 172nd.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know where the horizontal or vertical track of that's going to be yet. We should know by December of next year. Do you see any potential conflict between that extension of the freeway and potential conflict with elevations of some of your infrastructure?
Can you repeat which section?
Okay, it's going to be from 122nd
Okay.
out to 172nd, okay, is where the next design is going to be. So as I looked at your map here on your infrastructure going out towards Rock Creek,
Mm-hmm.
I can't help but wonder, is there any potential conflict between that freeway and your infrastructure?
Yes. Yes.
And so is somebody coordinating with Jacobs Engineering, keeping an eye on what's going on, or is the staff keeping you apprised on? Of course, we haven't seen anything back from Jacobs Engineering as of yet.
I thought I said Jeff. Yeah, come on, Jeff.
The answer should be yes. We're all working together on the Sunrise Gateway project. Greg, you and your staff have been part of the internal team, so
Yep.
yes.
Anything to add, Jeff?
No, I mean, I know we are, Jessica Renner, who's in our capital group, is a senior supervising engineer. She is working with, across the county as well to make sure that the Clackamas project and that Sunrise vision is coordinated, if I heard the question correctly.
All right, good, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? I want to thank you for this information-only policy session today. It's recorded on YouTube. Anybody can access it for more information, and there is a contact email there too, correct, Greg?
Yes.
Thank you. Gary, anything else?
That is it for today.
See no further.
about
Bus-
that?
Oh, do I need to recess? I will okay, no further business before this Board of County Commissioners. We are adjourned.